a very happy morning, happy afternoon, happy evening based on what time you're watching this lecture. Now let us move on to the next chapter, very small and interesting chapter called as written filing. So when you talk about your written filing, the provisions of written filing starts at your section 37. Section 37 read along with rule 59 talks about your outward supply. The focus is on your outward supply. Basically, you're talking about your GSTR1 or invoice furnishing facility, which is basically required to be filed only by a regular taxable person and casual taxable person. You'll understand a bit later. Right, we'll be discussing about that very clearly. Section 37 read along with rule 59. Then it is all about section 38 read along with your rule 60, which is all about your inward supply, which you are not required to furnish it, but it will be auto generated and it will be auto shown on your portal. So you're basically talking about your GSTR 2A, 2B, 4A, GSTR 4A, GSTR 6A. Basically that is the discussion that is happening. Details of inward supply, which is automatically generated and received by the communicated to the recipient. Details of your inward supply. And moreover, section 38 and section 41, which also talks about something called as provisional ITC. These two provisions, section 38 and section 41, were discussed when we have discussed about your input tax credit chapter, conditions for availing your input tax credit. So even both section 38 as well as your section 41 were covered there itself when we are talking about conditions for availing your input tax credit. So, and basically if you see section 38, the focus is on inward supply, again focus is on input tax credit, and here section 41 the focus is on provisional ITC based on the opposite person filing the return. So you're talking about your input tax credit. The main provision about your return filing is your section 39. Section 39. Section 39 talks about return filing for different kinds of persons, right starting at. So when you start at, you're talking about your regular taxable person or your casual taxable person. So there you're going to see your section 39 read along with rule 61, 61A. Rule 61, 61A. Right, when you talk about your regular taxable person as well as your casual taxable person, they may be under QRMP scheme, quarterly return monthly payment, or MRMP scheme, monthly return monthly payment. So that is given here. Then you are talking about return filing by a composition taxable person, which is again same section, section 39 read along with rule 62. That is a common rule which is there for your regular taxable person, casual taxable person and composition taxable person, which happens to be your rule 67A, which tells that if you don't have any transactions to be reported in your GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, or if you don't have any transaction to be reported in your CMP 08, you can file it by SMS facility. So a regular taxable person or a casual taxable person basically will file GSTR 1 plus GSTR 3B. 1 is in terms of section 37 read along with rule 59, and 3B is in terms of section 39 read along with rule 61, 61A. If at all you don't have anything to be reported in 1, anything to be reported in 3B, you can file your nil GSTR 1, nil GSTR 3B by SMS facility. That is given in section 67A. A composition taxable person files a CMP 08 quarterly, a CMP 08 and yearly GSTR 4. This is quarterly CMP 08 and yearly GSTR 4. As regard as quarterly CMP 08, only regarding quarterly CMP 08, it can be filed nil by SMS itself. Need not even log into the portal. The basic beauty of this SMS facility is if you don't have transaction in GSTR 1 or GSTR 3B or CMP 08, need not go to the portal. By SMS itself, you can file your nil return. So that is what is being discussed in your rule 67A, which basically talks about your GSTR 1 being nil, GSTR 3B being nil, and CMP 08 being nil. And with regarding to your GSTR 1 and 3B, it can be either on monthly basis or quarterly basis. depending on whether you are under QRMP scheme, quarterly return monthly payment, or MRMP scheme, monthly return monthly payment. So these three cases, GSTR 1, GSTR 3B by a regular taxable person, casual taxable person, CMP 08 by a composition taxable person. If at all you don't have any transactions, that nil return can be filed by your SMS facility, rule 67A. Then friends, we have something called as your non-resident taxable person. Your non-resident taxable person return is discussed in your section 39 read along with rule 63. So NRTP return, non-resident taxable person will file a special return called as GSTR 5. If you want to understand what return they will file, it is GSTR 5. Right, that will be in terms of section 39 read along with rule 63. Then you have something called as your OIDRS from outside India. A person who's providing online information and database access and retrieval services, automated online services without requiring any manual intervention from outside India to non-taxable online recipient. They will file a return under section 39 read along with your rule 64, and their return is GSTR 5A. GSTR 5A, section 39 read along with rule 64. Then you have something called as return filing by ISD, input service distributor, head office distributing the credit to the branches having the same GST number, input service distributor. Roughly you can understand in that way. That is section 39 read along with rule 65. TDS, that is again section 39 read along with rule 66. And you have something called as TCS. TCS is special because it is not under section 39, it is under section 52. Section 52 read along with rule 67. So their return filing numberings are your GSTR 6 for input service distributor, GSTR 7 for TDS, GSTR 8 for TCS. The only difference that you can easily identify here is when you are talking about your TCS return, it is not under section 39. If you see all other returns, whether it is your GSTR 3B by regular taxable person, casual taxable person, or CMP 08 GSTR 4 by composition taxable person, or whether you are talking about your NRTP or OIDRS from outside India, or ISD or TDS, they are all under section 39. Whereas you will find the TDS not under section 39, it is under section 52, read along with your rule 67 GSTR 8. Rather, it has got 9B also, that we will be discussing later. Then you have a special person called as persons having unique identification number. In simple language, you are talking about international organizations or international bodies having unique identification number. They are required to file a return called as GSTR 11 in terms of rule 82. So their return filing is GSTR 11. GSTR 11 in terms of your rule 82. Again, there is no section here, rightly you are talking about rule 82. So these are all the basic returns that they are given here. Now moving on to the next provision. The next provision is section 40, first return. Section 40, first return is not a separate return by itself. Which means if you are registered for the first time as a regular taxable person, GSTR 1 and 3B are your first returns. If you are registered for the first time as a composition taxable person, your CMP 08 and GSTR 4 happens to be your first returns. If you are registered for the first time as NRTP, your GSTR 5 happens to be a first return. So all these scenarios are given in section 40. Section 40. Now, moving on to the other provisions. If you see section 42, section 43 talks about matching concept, which was not there for a very long point of time since the inception of GST. It was never ever there, but provisions were there. Section 42, 43 read along with starting with rule 69 to rule 79. All these details. So there are two sections which are now omitted because they are of no use. They were there only lying. They were never ever used. Now that government has realized that matching will never ever happen, so two-way communication will never happen. Supply will give something, recipient will receive. That will happen even now. but recipient will react and get the details will go back to supplier and supplier will correct. No, that is not that. So that concept of matching of return, which government thought before bringing GST in terms of section 42, 43, right starting from rule 69 to rule 79 is fully omitted, but you still have matching concept when you talk about supply by supplier through electronic commerce operator. So when supplier is supplying goods or services through electronic commerce operator, right, so there you are talking about application of your TCS. There you are talking about application of your TCS, GST TCS. So matching will be there. Supplier will pay GST on his supplies. Electronic commerce operator will also show the supplies of the supplier, which happens through electronic commerce operator, and matching will happen. So that is a part of TCS chapter basically. So this section 78 is part of your TCS chapter. Now there are other concepts when you are talking about your return filing. Basically section 44 talks about your annual return. So overall required to file annual return, what are the due dates, that will be discussed in section 44, read along with rule 80. You have section 45 which talks about your final return. It talks about your final return. Final return is a separate return, not like first return. See, first return when you are getting registration for the first time. Final return when you are cancelling your registration. But the difference is, first return there is no separate form per se. What are returns you are required to file, those returns will be filed for the first time. But final return after cancellation, in terms of section 45, read along with rule 81, is a separate return called as GSTR 10. Whereas your annual return is GSTR 9A, and there may be GSTR 9C as well. And if you wonder where is GSTR 9B, GSTR 9B is nothing but part of your TCS statement, annual TCS statement. Right, we'll be discussing about that when you are going to those provisions. Now, talking about the next provision, which is there as section 46, notice. If you're not filing the returns, then you might get a notice, and what happens when you get a notice, what you do, that is given in section 46, read along with rule 68. Then you have something called as late fees. If you're not filing your return on time, what would be the amount of late fees, etc., etc., that is given in section 47. Conceptual provisions, so no rules. Then finally you have something called as GST practitioner, section 48. Who's GST practitioner, who's qualified, who's not qualified, what work he can do, what work he cannot do, etc., is all given in section 48, read along with rule 83, 84 and 83A. Right, 83, 83A and 84. So the section 48 read along with 83, 83, rule 83, 83A, 84. So that is the bird's eye view about your return filing chapter. Yes friends, now let us see the basic provisions of your return filing chapter. To start with, we'll start with something called as common portal, because basically when you talk about your return filing, it happens on one of the common portals, which is given in section 146 of your CGST Act. So when you talk about common portal, the definition of common portal, which is given in section 2 clause 26 of CGST Act, tells that common portal means common goods and service tax electronic portal. Common portal means it is common goods and service tax electronic portal as given in section 146. Now it actually shifts you to section 146. So when you see section 146 of CGST Act, right, what it tells, government on the recommendation of GST Council may notify common goods and service tax electronic portal for what all purposes? For, to start with, for registration, for payment, for filing of return, for computation and settlement of IGST, which will be done only and only by Parliament. So IGST revenue, as discussed a number of times, does not belong entirely to central government. It will belong partly to central government and partly will be given back to the states, destination state to be very specific, for your e-bill, for carrying out other functions. Right, so when you see all these functions, you will find that you can categorize them rather. One, you're talking about your registration, payment, return filing, computation and settlement of IGST, first part. Second, you're talking about your e-bill. Third, other functions, you're talking about one of the function being e-invoicing. One of the function being your e-invoicing. Right now, to give you a very clear picture, in GST you do have three common portals. Now one may wonder, so what is common portal? What is this common portal? This common portal will give you that interface. First let us understand the basic meaning of common portal, then we'll come back to three portals. Now when you talk about this common portal, what is the meaning of common portal and what is the benefit that it gives? This common portal will link everyone. Right? It is accessible by internet when you're talking about the taxpayers or the tax professionals, CAs, advocates, practitioners. Intranet, a local intranet when you're talking about tax officials. So how taxpayers and tax professionals will have access to common portal by internet, and how the tax department, that is officials, will have the access by way of intranet, and it will link basically everyone. It will link all the state and union territory tax department, central tax department. Why? Because whether you're sitting in Maharashtra or whether you're sitting in Delhi or whether you're sitting in Sikkim or whether you're sitting in West Bengal or Jammu and Kashmir or Tamil or Kerala, all will be using the same portal, right? So it will link all the tax department, whether it is state tax, all the states tax department, union territory tax department, central tax department. It will connect you the taxpayers, banks, other stakeholders. So the flow will go like that. The information given by the taxpayer will be passed on to the tax professional, who will rather give it to the tax officials, which will be available on the portal. Even banks will have the access to the portal. Even the accounting authorities, other authorities of the government will have the access. So it is basically linking everyone, right? Starting from the taxpayer, tax professional, tax official, bankers, other accounting authorities, all the departments, not only one department, all the state departments, all the union territory departments, even the central government department, everyone will be having the same usage of the portal. Primarily, when you talk about your portals, now let us talk about, this is the meaning of your common portal. To put in a very simple way, one more simple way, it is all about your common and shared IT infrastructure between central government, state government, also the taxpayer. So it is the same infrastructure, same website, common and shared IT infrastructure, which is same for the central government, state government, union territory, and the taxpayer, tax professional, etc., even for the bankers. Now coming back to the three portals that you have. Now you would have three portals. The first portal being the main portal, that is www.gst.gov.in, which is managed or maintained by GST network. So the main portal, www.gst.gov.in. Now this is fully managed by GST network. Now what is GST network? It is nothing but a section 8 companies under Companies Act, non-profit company under Companies Act, owned by the government and the banks. Now what this portal will do, let us call this as main portal. We'll call this portal as your main portal. This main portal will do all the works, right, starting from taking your registration, payment of taxes, filing of returns, computation and settlement of integrated tax, all other functions like filing of appeals, giving notices, replying, everything will happen in the main portal. This is the first portal. Second portal is your www.evabilgst.gov.in. This is not managed by GST network, it is managed by National Informatics Center. So this happens to be managed by National Informatics Center, which is under Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Now what works this e-Wabil portal will do, that is www.evabilgst.gov.in. It will do only one work, generation of e-Wabil. So for the movement of goods along with the base document, whether it is tax invoice or bill of supply or delivery challan or bill of entry, you require a supporting document. That supporting document will be your e-Wabil. So for that e-Wabil, initially they did not have a separate portal. Rather, the main portal stride started from your 1st of July 2017. E-Waybill portal came out only in year 2018. So when you talk about your E-Waybill portal, it was brought out only in 2018. Right, initially they tried E-Waybill portal to be there on the normal portal, but it didn't work out. There's something called as volume test. The data which is there for E-Waybill, the persons who are generating E-Waybill or the transactions which E-Waybill portal handles could not be managed by the same portal, so they came out with the new portal. The only work of this portal is generation of E-Waybill, which is nothing but a supporting document which will be there along with the base document, be it tax invoice, be it bill of supply, be it delivery challan, or be it bill of entry for home consumption when the goods are moving in a conveyance. Now, the last portal which was which came out somewhere in 2020-21 is e-invoice portal, which is www.einvoice1.gst.gov.in, and like that it has www.einvoice2.gst.gov.in. you have till 10, right? 1 2 3 4, you have till 10. So last is www.einvoice10.gst.gov.in, and again this is again managed by your GST network. The only work of this e-invoice portal is to ensure that it is generating e-invoicing. All those associates for whom e-invoicing is mandatory are generating e-invoicing. When you are directly accessing e-invoicing portal, you have to log into the first website, whereas the second website, that is www.einvoice2.gst.gov.in, till the 10th website, they are being used by the software companies. You cannot have access. You can have access only to the first website. Second, then they have been used by the software companies for automatic generation of e-invoicing using a software. Say for example, you are using a Tally for generating your invoice. So Tally will integrate in the backend to the e-invoice portal and automatically give you e-invoice. So Tally will not be touching your first website. It will be touching number 2 or number 3 or likewise number 10 website randomly. So you're talking about e-invoicing website. Now the only purpose of this e-invoicing website, rather totally being 10 in number, is for generation of e-invoicing. If you see, the second website is only and only for your e-Waybill, and the third website is only and only for your e-invoicing. Rest all the works, be it registration, be it payment, be it filing of return, be it computation and settlement of IGST by Parliament, be it show cause notice issues by department, be it reply to show cause notice being order given by the officer, be it filing of appeals, be it anything, everything else is managed or done by your main GST portal, which is www.gst.gov.in. So that is the basic understanding. And like I said, what is the basic understanding of GST network and all? We have already discussed GST network and what it does. Already we have understood that particular purpose. Now there is something called as GST Suvidha Providers, GSP. There is something called as GST Suvidha Providers, which we call it as GSP, and there is something called as even ASP. You will find that there is something, you have it called as ASP, GSP and ASP. Now what is this GST Suvidha Providers? They are nothing but IT companies. So when you talk about GST network, has selected few information technology companies and fintech companies, so that they can come ahead and get them registered as GST Suvidha Providers with the GST network. It is nothing but, they are nothing but the third party service providers. See, always understand that directly talking to the portal might not be so convenient, so easy for the associate. So certain software IT companies or fintech companies should come forward and tell that, okay, we are there to help you so that you can directly communicate to the government portal via us. So on the front end, you will not be seeing the GST portal, you will be only talking to a particular software, but back end that software will communicate to the portal. So that is basically your GST Suvidha Providers. So they are third party service providers with the help of whom all the GST compliances, right, starting from your maintaining of records, raising of invoice, expenses, filing of your returns, everything, e-invoicing, e-Waybill, everything can be done via your GST Suvidha Provider. See, taxpayer has got multiple options. Option 1, taxpayer can directly talk to the portal. GST network. Or second option, taxpayer can talk to the GST Suvidha provider, say for example Tally, who will in turn talk to the portal. So this is the second option. Say for example, you are talking about GST Suvidha provider being say Tally. So taxpayer will give all the details to your Tally GST Suvidha provider, and that you will have communication only with GST Suvidha provider Tally. That will talk to GST network. That is the second option. Now third option, taxpayer can communicate both to your application service provider, now a new terminology is coming out, and your GST Suvidha provider. So taxpayer partly will communicate to application service provider and partly will communicate to GST Suvidha provider, and finally your GST Suvidha provider will talk to GST network. Let me take an example. So let us assume that GST Suvidha provider is Tally. Let us assume that you are running a restaurant for which you have a POS machine, point of sale machine, right? Point of sale POS machine, point of sale machine. So all your sale transactions are recorded in POS, a specialized software, right? Basically you are having your accounts in Tally, but as regard to sales, it is in a separate software. So main software which will talk to GST network is Tally, GST Suvidha provider, but few transactions will be captured in application service provider, and those transactions which are captured in application service provider will then be taken to GST Suvidha provider. So assessee or the taxpayer will give few details directly to GST Suvidha provider. Say for example, purchases, expenses, capital goods and all. Few details, say like sales will be entered in application service provider, which will be further communicated automatically, one software talking to other software in GST to GST Suvidha provider, and finally all the details when they are ready in Tally, that will talk to GST network. Now what is the beauty of this application service providers? Now application service provider rather is making your job simple, who is acting as a link between the taxpayer and the GST Suvidha provider. So few details I'll be only given to application service provider, like my sales, and automatically from my application service provider, say my point of sale machines, it will be talking to Tally. Now what is the reason why GST Suvidha provider or application Suvidha provider will be used by the taxpayers? One may always wonder, when taxpayer can directly talk to the GST network, why he will be going for all these GST Suvidha providers or application service provider, as the case may be. Why he is going to GST Suvidha provider or ASP application service providers? For the first reason, you need to understand the reason. The reason is quite simple. He will make his job very simple, rather raising the invoice, uploading the invoice on invoice portal, filing of returns, reconciliation of your input tax credit, or you're talking about customization of your product, which means might be you want the details in a particular format when you get the data, but at the same time it should also communicate to the GST portal. So the purpose of you going to GST Suvidha providers like Tally, or even using application service providers, certain special softwares for few functions, is very simple. You want to make your life simple by not only recording all the transactions, but also getting the report of the transaction in the way you want. At the same time, automatically the application service provider via GST Suvidha provider or GST Suvidha provider directly will talk to your GST network. So that is the whole purpose of this understanding of GST Suvidha provider and ASP, application service provider. The bigger company, rather the bigger company, or the bigger role, higher role in terms of GST network is of GST Suvidha provider. Then obviously application service provider cannot directly talk to GST network, but it can talk to GST network via your GST Suvidha provider. So that is the basic understanding of your common portal, and this chart is not telling anything new. Whatever we have discussed about the GST network till now, it is reiterating what is given here, and there are certain additional points which are given here. Say for example, if you look at this particular point, it is talking about your GST network will help you in getting registration, filing of returns, matching the tax payment, right? So this computation and settlement of IGST. So these details we have already discussed. Now what is new given here? Matching and reclaim of ITC. This entire concept is no more there. You don't have the concept of matching, so this entire point is of no sense as of now. And certain special points which are given here is officer will use it for analyzing taxpayer's profile, whether he's registered, for how long he's registered, is he a big taxpayer or small taxpayer, is he a compliant taxpayer or non-compliant taxpayer. So taxpayer's profile will be easily accessible, and through which the department can generate MIS report. So the new things which you find here is, from the point of view of department, easy access of taxpayers profile and analysis can be done, so that further actions can be taken by the department. Also, this network, as it has got a lot of information, it will give the information in form of statistics. To put in a very simple terms, what is relevant will be given in a form called as management information system. What is important, what is not important will not be given. What is important will be highlighted in management information reports to the central government and state government, so that they can talk about the statistics. Every month after GST collection, you see the newspaper headline on the first page of all the newspapers, how much GST collection is done. So that is one of the feature of your GST network. So if you see the functions given here, the 4 functions we have already discussed, be it registration, about payment, about return filing, about computation and settlement of IGST. So these 2 things are certain new points, but nevertheless you understand that GST network after all will have a lot of data with it, with which it can analyze the taxpayer's profile and also give beautiful management information system report to the government. So that is all about your portal.